dispersal of the crowd was handled. What was your thinking when you saw those images?
So I'm told, after asking about it, that there was a plan to expand the perimeter from H Street to I Street based on the events that as they had unfolded the night before. And I think I've read other stories where the Attorney General was talking about expanding the perimeter, again, based on some of the violence and arson and anarchy from the night before. So that was being done. Clearly, the president doesn't know how law enforcement is handling his movements, his travel one way or the other. And I would say that I hope there's the same, if not more, of a level of concern of the people who are losing their lives, the civilians, the police officers who are injured. And what you look at a place like New York City last night, where all 4 of my children were born, where I lived for a long time, it's heartbreaking to me. And I guess it's heartbreaking to Governor Cuomo, who just said that the NYPD and Mayor de Blasio did not do their jobs last night. They're moving the curfew from 11 p.m. to I think 7 or 8, I think 8 o'clock tonight. You can look it up. So we need to have sort of the same level of outrage on things that are outrageous, and not just cherry pick this, that, the other, or use words that I think are unfortunate to describe the president having this continuum about religion. In the span of 10 days, he went from saying churches are essential, places of worship are essential, mosques, synagogue, churches. We need more prayer, not less. Stop discriminating against them under the First Amendment, where you've got abortion clinics and liquor stores and other places deemed essential, open, ready for business, and we're closing our places of worship. You have one governor I can think of who happens to be on the short list, the all-women short list of Joe Biden's VP selection. She went from having places of worship be essential to not essential. We have the governor of Illinois saying, gee, places of worship can't reopen until we have a vaccine. Goodness. And so we see all that festering. The president comes out. We have new CDC guidelines. Then he's over at St. John's Church. Today he and the First Lady went to the shrine of St. John Paul II to lay a wreath commemorating the former pontiff and saint's 100th birthday. And also then came back to the Oval Office. I was in there and signed an executive order on religious liberty. So it's a pretty consistent continuum for this president in standing up for religious rights. I think it's very unfortunate that people of faith would call into question what is in anyone's heart, including the president's, what compelled him to go over to St. John's and hold up his Bible. I mean, the politicization of that by people of faith is very unfortunate.
Does he wish the crowd situation had been handled differently, that the crowds had been dispersed and made more?
I haven't discussed that with him. I'm happy to see that nobody was harmed from what I read, and I asked about that specifically today. Asked what the protocol was and who makes those decisions. As you know, because you're in the White House press corps and you travel with the president and you're here on the grounds daily, that people who are in charge of the president's movement and safeguarding, protecting the president and the vice president of the United States make real-time decisions as how best to accomplish that. So I would refer you the rest of those questions to those authorities, but I did ask the question to be better informed myself. Maisha?
Faith leaders, a lot of them continue to criticize what happened when the president arrived at St. John's. How do you describe what happened as being more than a photo op?
I think the words photo op itself call into you're looking in somebody's heart and wondering and second guessing why they would go over there. Is it a photo op because a photo was taken while the President of the United States was in front of a church where we went on Inauguration Day, where every president has gone for more than 2 centuries? I think that itself is a mischaracterization. I know it ended up being the Sesame Street Grover word of the day, but that doesn't make it right and it doesn't make it true. The president very much felt when he saw those images on Sunday night of that cross a terrible line. That goes way beyond peaceful protesting. That goes way beyond almost anything. You have to draw a line somewhere, and he saw that and saw many people very upset about that. But I think, again, I'm going to say different faith leaders calling anybody, frankly. Let's say somebody's an atheist, calling into question somebody else's faith, I think is a very fraught proposition. And this is a president who just now, moments ago, Wasia, in the Oval Office, signed an executive order on religious liberty for the entire world. That builds on his work last September at the United Nations General Assembly, where President Trump became the first president in American history to address the United Nations General Assembly thusly, that way on international religious freedom. Pretty tough stance that he took there. I know it didn't make everybody happy in the world because they are persecuting people based on their religion, and they should not be, and he made that very clear. So I think those criticisms, people have a right to make them, but I think they're unfortunate because they have more than a tinge of calling into question the president's motivation for going to a church that had been set afire by anarchists and arsonists less than 24 hours earlier. Sure, I'll have plenty of time. Pardon?
President Trump has questioned House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's faith. Should he take that back?
What he said was that she says that something like she prays for him, and he doesn't believe that. That's not calling into question her faith. That's calling into question. I mean, I didn't hear him say, how can somebody who calls herself, practicing Catholic be for abortion in the 9th month? He could have said that, but I didn't hear him say that. He said, because I was there when he said it, and he said it at the National Prayer Breakfast. I rode with him that day, actually, in the Beast, and we were talking about it, and he said, how could she say she prays for me when they just tried to, impeach me, got acquitted the day before, of course. I know it seems like a long time ago, but it was recent.
Does the president have any plans to make remarks or address racial inequality, historical trauma by the black community that protesters have been deprived? Do they have any plans to address that at all?
Well, it's very much on our minds here, and it's absolutely the case that there is institutional racism and that there is a lack of equality for all people in this country. I think that is without doubt. And I also just want to say in my own voice that we watched a man be murdered before our eyes on a videotape, and as painful as it is to watch, I think most people should bring themselves to watch all 8 minutes and 49 seconds or so of George Floyd's murder. I don't have another word for it. And I'm very happy that the Department of Justice says they've opened up a civil rights investigation at the federal level. We'll see what comes of that. Obviously, the officer in question was charged with murder under, I believe, Minnesota state law. They're in charge of that prosecution. And there is inequality and there is institutional racism in many places and in many people's hearts. And so that's why this president has worked tirelessly to bring economic opportunity, criminal justice reform. I know in the drug crisis we've reached out many times to community of colors, really trying to help those hardest hit. From that, we did a big thing recently on mental health, and we're working very hard on vulnerable communities here also. Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, seniors, and certainly African Americans. So, and I'm sort of a voice around here for the president to continue to speak with African American leaders as he has done, and as members of his team do routinely from the beginning. And I think that we have to listen to everyone and frankly, continue to take action. I would tell you, just because I have a mind for dates, that on March 18th, 2008, my now 12-year-old was 1 week old to the day, and I remember candidate Obama giving a speech in Philadelphia about race. He gave a big race speech in which he really distanced himself from Jeremiah Wright, his pastor of many years, and I think that he had married the Obamas, baptized the girls. Obviously, they were congregants, and he distanced himself from really ugly comments that Reverend Wright had made. But he made a big race speech, and in that same city, 12 plus years later, you have his vice president, Joe Biden, in the same city today talking about doing something on race. And one has to scratch their head and wonder, why Joe Biden hasn't done more. Why is he talking about that today? And so we all need to do better as a nation. But I would wonder why Joe Biden thinks that he should, he has some kind of privilege or right to continue a record that seems underwhelming at best from his time in that building.
Does the president believe that there is institutional racism?
I just said that there is institutional racism, so I'm telling you that, yes.
You talked about
in some places and by some people.
The executive order that the president signed today. Sitting on his desk right now is a piece of legislation that passed both chambers of Congress that would allow him to sanction Chinese individuals that had persecuted Uyghur minorities. The White House has refused to comment repeatedly on what the president's going to do with this bill. So can you say now, is he going to sign it and will he sanction it?
I'll let the president answer that. I think he was asked about it last week, if I'm not mistaken.
He said that he was going to study it, and
yes.
The White House still refused to say it.
So
doesn't this prompt the question?
No, it doesn't prompt the question, because part of what the president said very specifically at the United Nations General Assembly last September is that we're against the persecution of the Uyghurs. I mean, he's made that very clear, and I can't think of anybody being tougher on China in many different ways than the president was in the Rose Garden on Friday. I didn't say he wouldn't sign it. I'm just saying that, and I'm glad Congress actually did something. That's the best news of all. The president is way on record of being against the persecution of the Uyghurs. It's good that Congress found a way to actually come and do something. They seem to be AWOL. They're just absent, except for their photo ops and sound bites. You have Chuck Schumer today saying he's going to introduce a resolution. Has he looked in his backyard in New York? Why doesn't he go help the people of New York? I mean, you've got the cities on fire and being looted and rioted night after night. You've got the governor arguing with the mayor, arguing with the police force. They're not getting the job done. I don't see him worried about all the senior citizens who were returned to their nursing homes infected with COVID-19, sent there to die. So I would, tell him. So the president is way on the record, and if we have an update on that particular piece of legislation, I'll let you know. Yeah.
We're hearing that the president's going to be meeting with his economic advisors this week to talk about next steps, relief measures. Where does that stand within the White House right now? What exactly does the president support or want to see?
Yeah, I can't say exactly what he's going to support. He's been very clear about looking at a phase 4, possibly infrastructure, more relief for distressed industries and individuals, growing the economy, making sure that the Trump economy that everybody witnessed over the last 3 years comes back roaring. I see the consumer confidence numbers, the market numbers, housing demand is up, auto demand is up. And so there are different indicators. Larry Kudlow and I rode over to the St. John Paul II Memorial today, and he was telling me that 4 million people got off of unemployment last week. So that's, those are all great signs. I don't think it helps our small businesses come back at all when so many of these businesses steps away from here were ready to reopen after having closed for months and months, ready to reopen at their expense, putting in plexiglass or socially distancing things or doing different sanitation measures in their kitchen and in the room where you're in the dining rooms, and yet now they have to close all over again because they've been looted, they've been robbed, their windows are knocked out. And so along with the windows, their dreams are shattered yet again. So we're looking at that. I know that he is talking about a number of different measures and is meeting with the team regularly, but yes, they do have a meeting this week. That is true.
And separately, on the RNC, we're hearing maybe that the convention might be moved to Nashville. Has the president made a decision on potentially the event still taking place in North Carolina being moved elsewhere?
No decision has been made. When he makes it, he'll announce it, or the chairwoman of the convention or the chairwoman of the RNC will announce that. I've been in some of these meetings, and we'll wait to see what the president says. I think the president's made very clear he would like to keep it in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's always been the plan. That's been the contracted, anticipated plan. You have, I would imagine, thousands of North Carolinians, employees, businesses, contractors who have banked that money. They felt they've been under contract for several years now to be able to participate in what always promises to be a fairly profitable undertaking, political conventions, Democrats in Milwaukee, Republicans in Charlotte. The president would like to keep it there. Some of that is up to the governor and I suppose the mayor of Charlotte. I know they asked for a plan, and I understand they've received it or are in the process of receiving a plan from the RNC, answering some of their questions. But you've also seen a number of different governors and mayors say, come to us, we're open for business, we'll accommodate you. But there will be a convention. I know people out there who don't really want Joe Biden to be out and about very much, let alone at a convention, are saying that maybe we shouldn't have conventions, but that'll be a great opportunity for, in a safe way, for Americans and indeed the world to hear the Trump progress report and his vision for the next 4 years, and I suppose for Vice President Biden the same thing.
Yes. I know you mentioned that the administration had reached out to black leaders. Has the president himself reached out to the Congressional Black Caucus? I know they are talking about drafting legislation addressing police reform specifically. The Senate says they're going to have a hearing soon to address these policies. Is that something that the administration is open to?
We'll certainly look at that, absolutely. I mean, I happen to know colleagues here who have worked on those initiatives with externally and internally, and that's all I'll say. But obviously, any piece of legislation that comes to our desk, the president will entertain. That's always the case.
Is police reform something that
Pardon me?
Police reform specifically to look at policies and take federal action?
Well, you're asking different questions now, but obviously, and I think it bears repeating that what was done to George Floyd was murder. my word now, but the word of many, obviously including the prosecutors in Minnesota. And I don't want ascribed onto all members of law enforcement the horrific act that happened to this innocent man with a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 49 seconds. Just as we don't want to, look at all FBI agents as, the same as other people who were doing bad things. We don't want everybody in a certain industry, media included, I know you treat us all so well and individually here at the White House, so we'll do that with every industry. But I think there's a lot to look at, much to examine, and much to improve in our country to help it heal, but also to just really make institutional changes that I guess other administrations failed to make. So we're happy to take that on. Also looking at school choice and charter schools and educational freedom for lots of those communities as well. It'd be great to have some Democratic support on that. I think they've got no good answer on why they oppose that. No good answer.
Have you guys worked with the Congressional Black Caucus on any of those issues?
I'd have to ask Legislative Affairs about that. I receive calls myself. I'm one small person here, and I receive calls individually from members routinely, and always happy to entertain those calls and speak privately. And if they would like to be public about that, they're welcome to do that. I don't betray those confidences, and I'm also not the president, so I'm happy to do my small part, and we will continue to. I'm always open to that, always. Frankly, it's why we're here.
What was your main takeaway from the visit to the shrines?
That the president will stand for religious freedom, and that we will draw a line when arsonists and anarchists set fire to places of worship. In this case, one that is known as the President's Church, Church of All Presidents, beginning, I saw many of you retweeting, so I'll go with it, beginning with President James Monroe. It has a great deal of cultural and religious significance to many Americans, to many presidents, right, left, and center, and holding up the Bible. And I think it's a continuum of what the president has done very recently, within the last half hour, signing the Religious Liberty Executive Order, visiting the St. John Paul II Shrine today to lay a wreath with the First Lady, yesterday St. John's Church, and then 10 days before that saying we need to open up our places of worship, synagogues, mosques, churches, and the like. Stop discriminating against them under the First Amendment. They are essential businesses. Let the churches and the mosques and the synagogues figure out how to safely reopen. And then if you as a congregant choose to go, you go. If you choose not to go, you don't go. But at least make those options available in states that clearly have cannabis dispensaries and abortion clinics and liquor stores and you name it now, open for business. I'll come right there.
Regarding the demonstration outside here yesterday, did any White House official have any role in the decision to force it to push back the protesters before his visit?
So what I was told is that the authorities make those decisions. And they make those decisions generally because they had already decided to expand the perimeter from H Street to I Street based on the events from the night before. In addition, I would just say, along with you, as somebody who watches the president's movements and the way law enforcement tackles those, if you will, accommodates those, is they make a moment-by-moment decision as to how best to safeguard the president, the vice president, and other protectees of the United States Secret Service. I'm glad nobody was hurt. I'm very happy that, especially including people who complained they need to hear more from the president. Where is the president? So you see the president in the Rose Garden, he walks over to St. John's Church, and somehow that's open to criticism too. I think the president was there to speak to all people, not to just address his critics at all and his naysayers. He's there to speak to all people. And to stand in solidarity with people of faith and even people who don't have a religion that they claim. Just to say, anarchists and arsonists, that's not peaceful protesting. You're setting fire to a historic structure in the Church of Presidents, and it will not stand.
So the president had no role whatsoever in the decision?
Not that I'm aware of. That would surprise me. I don't think anybody asks him to make decisions about his security.
He had alluded to earlier in the day there being more of a crackdown on in his call with governors yesterday, they alluded to there being a crackdown in D.C. We'll see what happens. He's very vague. There was no connection between them.
I don't think the president's vague at all when he says to the governors, you need to take control of your cities and your states.
He specifically was talking about D.C.
Well, D.C., as the president said today, D.C. went better last night. D.C. went well. I think a lot of that's a curfew. When it's still daylight, I'm sure it helped, and I'm sure people learned from the night before. And we also have brave people out there washing off, the graffiti on our nation's monuments. They belong to the country. They're national treasures. So that's all I'll say. I've said it a couple times now. Jeff?
Kellyanne, the president's remarks last night in the Rose Garden focused a lot on the military. Forgive me if someone has asked this before I joined you. But how seriously is he considering invoking the insurrection?
I think the president made clear what he thinks of that. He retweeted Senator Cotton, I believe, who was talking about this. No decision has been made on that, and nobody ever wants things to get to that point where it's necessary. But I think what the president is doing to assure a troubled, panicked nation that turns on their TV and sees looting and rioting and violence, which is not what the Floyd family has called for. I watched them with rapt attention yesterday. And just say, please, continue to protest, but please put up the peace sign. And other people have said that. I think President Obama had a similar message. And I actually read President Obama's op-ed yesterday. I'm surprised it didn't get more coverage, except it may not have been the message some people anticipated or wanted him to deliver, which essentially was, it's easy to look at the federal government and the presidency, but you also must look locally and at your own states for action on issues such as this. And I agree with President Obama. So I also just want to point out to you that the president also in the Rose Garden yesterday talked about George Floyd and talked about the police officer in Oakland, California, also lost his life as a result of these events. And so let's just not cherry pick what was said there. It's very important. He has said it at NASA as well. Talked to a family member on Friday, and will continue to, if they would like, to continue to speak with the president.
I want to follow up on that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because we certainly have condemned the killing, no question, of George Floyd. But the tone of his remarks yesterday and the emphasis in terms of how many words were given, or lines, or however you want to measure it, was certainly more about the military side.
Well, that's an opinion. I mean, respectfully, tone is an opinion.
No, we can go back and look at. I mean, just counting the words. That's all I said.
Tone is an opinion.
Okay, with regard to tone then, my question to you is, are you comfortable, is the White House comfortable with the tone that is being set, or are you looking to tweak it?
I'm incredibly uncomfortable with what I see going on in this country that we all love so much, and it's been good to all of us. Pardon me?
I mean the tone that you are saying.
No, I'm looking at the content as well as the tone, and the content is that we help people who are in need, and that we protect, that we equip our nation's mayors, governors, whoever wants the National Guard in there, whoever wants other resources, we equip them however they need with the information and the resources that they require to make sure that the streets aren't turned over to rioting and looting. I mean, how can you watch that and feel comfortable with people decimating small businesses in the moment of a snap, in the blink of an eye, that people work so hard to build? Again, I was a small business owner. I started my business 25 years ago yesterday. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of rejection, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of failure. And I look at these business owners, multi-generational businesses, community-based businesses, mom and pops, mom and dads, they're hurting, they're suffering. People are just breaking their windows and stealing their stuff. And that is, you can call it tone or content. It's just wrong.
Or emphasis. What I'm referring to is what the emphasis that the president put on his remarks.
Well, I like the emphasis that the president has put on the senseless murder of George Floyd, and that he should not have died in vain. He should not have died at all. But the president has made very clear that we have a civil rights investigation at the federal level. That's his Department of Justice, and that the officer, the one officer so far, has been charged under Minnesota law with murder, and that's just, and that there's nothing that will bring that innocent man's life back, but that is just.
Just a quick coronavirus question. I know you are in touch with the task force a lot. Is there anything that's being done to prepare for a potential second wave with
Yes.
these protesters?
Yes, there's a task force meeting today. I'd be surprised if there weren't task force briefings soon, and so that everybody can ask their questions and get some information about everything from a next possible wave to the decrease in hospitalizations, new cases, deaths, all across this country, vaccine and therapeutic developments. There are many things to say. And we certainly are preparing for that, and in the meantime, really racing against the clock to keep these therapeutics and vaccines in development. And very heartened by what we see. I mean, every new case is troubling and every death is a tragedy. Very heartened by the sheer decrease in both of those, and the fact that we have surge supplies, ventilators, PPE, gowns and the like, to a point where, God forbid, there is a second major surge, we're able to have those enhanced with that equipment at the ready. That includes in our nursing homes. I know at the seniors event about a month ago, the National Guard FEMA Administrative Gainer made clear and is since delivering on, I think they're about 50% of the way there or more or better, delivering that PPE to those nursing homes, all 15,400 nursing homes that are Medicare approved in this country, to make sure they've got that PPE prophylactically in case they do have a surge in the nursing homes, by way of example.
Question on Russia, Kellyanne. Can you speak further about President Trump's call with who initiated the call, and why would you reach out to Russia on an issue about bringing him back to the G7?
Well, they discussed many things, and we did put a readout.
Right,
the press shop
that
put a
was
readout.
referring about bringing Russia back into the G7, as I understand. Why would he do that when Russia is actually kicked out of the G7 because of what they did to China?
So the president put it out there. He said he thinks the G7 should be expanded, and they discussed a number of different issues. And frankly, Russia also, I think, recently was in need of ventilators. So there were a number of different things for them to discuss, including global security, coronavirus, obviously the G7. But we'll see what happens with that.
Who initiated the call?
I don't want to discuss that. I would refer to NSC for those things.
You said the task force briefings could be coming back soon. In what form or manner would that be? Would that be the doctors coming back, updating data? Where we
Sure. Well, the task force.
Often?
The task force includes doctors and scientists. It includes the economists. It includes the vice president is running it. So I think it'd be great to give the country an update on everything that's happening, because there was a task force meeting today at 11. There's one again either tomorrow or the next day. They're meeting regularly. They also have additional meetings outside of I think tomorrow maybe they'll talk to the governors about the health piece, because yesterday was more about, yesterday was practically exclusively about the unrest and the murder of George Floyd.
Today, the task force meeting was about the unrest?
No. I'm saying today there was a coronavirus task force meeting. I'm saying yesterday's governor's call that's usually about the coronavirus was not. So there'll be another one for the coronavirus, and then there'll be another task force meeting. And I think under the vice president's leadership, you'll be able to hear from different members of the task force, which, as you know, has been expanded to include Secretary of Labor Scalia. I think Larry Kudlow's always been on there, is now, for example, along with the doctors who are here for the task force meetings. So that's exciting, and we want to continue to inform the public on those issues. So thank you very much, and everybody take care. Bye-bye. Be well.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us here at Golden State Times. If you like the coverage, our coverage of Kellyanne Conway doing a Q&A with reporters, then make sure that you give it a thumbs up and you share it on social media. Also, if you are new to the channel, we encourage you to subscribe and click that notification bell. If you want to stay up to date on everything that is going on in politics, follow us on Twitter at Gold State Times. Also, if you want to check out some behind the scenes pictures of what is going on at the White House and events that President Trump delivers speeches at, follow us on Instagram at Golden State Times. Thank you so much, folks, and we'll see you very soon. Peace.